Hello, my name is Ogola Lois Kange, and my presentation is on the 19th century woman, Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom was born on the 15th of April 1892 to her mother, Cor ten Boom, and her father, Caspar ten Boom. At birth, her name was Cornelia Arnolda Johanna. She was born prematurely, and unfortunately, she was a sickly child. Corrie was the fourth child of the family, and she was also the third daughter to Caspar and Cor. She had an elder brother named William and an elder sister, Arnolda. She also had an elder sister, Betsy, whose name was actually Elizabeth. Corrie was not your typical girl child. She wouldn't like to play dress up like the other girls. She didn't even have the features for it. So that was not her prerogative. Rather, she learned how to repair watches. That's what she really loved to do. And she learned it from her dad. She was the daughter of a Dutch watchmaker and had come from a line of Dutch watchmakers. She was not one that really loved schooling. So when she had this opportunity to drop out of school and focus on the career in watchmaking, she quickly took it, quickly learned the trade from him, and she became the first female licensed watchmaker in the whole of Netherlands. And that's what she did. Her dad also loved the profession. As I said earlier, sometimes he would, get carried away just fixing the intricacies of watches that he would not even charge for it. But when Corrie grew older and took over the business, she, made the business more, profitable. She made it a better business. Corrie didn't get married, even though she had fallen in love with one of William, her elder brother William's friends. She did not get married to him because, unfortunately, he had been engaged by his parents to someone else, and so that was not a relationship that was meant to be. She was left heartbroken, devastated when she found out they were engaged, and they actually soon got married. And Corrie never ever loved found love again. Corrie and Betsy never married. Corrie's family, her dad, her elder sister, and they lived in their home that they popularly called the Beji. When the war began, their home became like a shelter. It became essentially a shelter for the Jews and for people that were being targeted at the time. So they saw the yellow starred people being shoved into these trucks one time by the Nazi Germans. And Corrie remarked to her dad, "Oh, what poor people." She was referring to the Jews actually. But her dad was looking at the same direction, and he said, he nodded his head and said, poor people indeed. But he wasn't looking at the Jews. He was looking at the Germans, because he was like, poor people, they have touched the apple of God's eyes, referring to the Nazi Germans. Corrie dedicated her entire life to helping others. She had been teaching the mentally disabled children for a long time. And during the war, her genuine love for humanity just shone forth. And so it was no surprise that when they had this opportunity by her family to begin sheltering these Jews, Corrie took it. Their home became a shelter for the Jews throughout the war. A Jewish woman came to their door needing shelter. They quickly offered it and they provided it, and soon their home became a lodging for the many Jews that needed shelter at the time. They found themselves as one of the key point places for the resistance, actually, and they were, by God's grace, able to provide ration cards for the hundreds of Jews that were being housed in all over, scattered throughout different places during the war. These ration cards were the only legal ways that people could purchase groceries. So getting those large number of ration cards allowed them to provide food for the Jews that they were sheltering in their homes and in other places. At one point during the whole incident, resistance sent an architect to come and check out their house, and he designed and constructed a secret hiding place that was adjacent Corrie's room, and that was a room in the upstairs where they could hide those Jews. It was hidden and designed with an alarm system so that when the alarm buzzed, everybody in the house would know the secret alarm was off. They would hear it and then go into hiding. They had so many drills preparing them for that time. And one day, that time finally came when this hidden room became a refuge for the Jews during this time of the occupation. There was Corrie and her family, they never intended to convert anyone at any point. Though they had a lot of religious discussions with the Jews, it was not their intent to convert them, rather to show love to them. So by the love, they showed the love of Jesus to these people. They simply showed them love of God. When the Gustavo came that fateful night to raid their home, he hit the sick Corrie so hard and so many times, trying to get her to tell where she was hiding her Jews, but she didn't. They were all hidden by God. And when they had searched, Gustavo searched the entire house they had raided, and they had to remark. The Gustavo said, if there is a secret hiding place in this house, then it must have been constructed by the devil himself. That was how well that hidden place was hidden. Eventually, her entire family was discovered. Her brother, her father, her sister, they were sent to the camp, and those who were in the hiding room were safe. And one day in the camp, Corrie got a letter telling her that the 12 wristwatches in her closet are all safe. And she knew that that letter was referring to the Jews that she had hidden. They were all safe. During one of those interrogations that Corrie had with one of the lieutenants, the German lieutenant asked Corrie why she bothered wasting her time with such half-wits. And Corrie's response to him was, well, to you, he was referring to the disabled people and the mentally retarded people that she was taking care of. She told him, but one half-wit may be worth more than a lieutenant and even more than a watchmaker. Corrie demonstrated her faith, her love for humanity in the midst of every intense trial that she had to face. They were taken to the concentration camp. Unfortunately, her dad died on the way. Caspar Tenboom, just 10 days after they were arrested because he was already ill. And she and Betsy were taken to the concentration camp. William got released at some point, and some of the other relatives were released at some point. But Corrie herself and Betsy were taken to Ravensbrück concentration camp. In the concentration camps and in the midst of other ordeals that they were going through, they had, that's the cold weather, the fleas, the inhumane conditions that they went through. They still held on to their faith. Betsy and Corrie will gather women together after they had finished their daily assignments. They will have a time of fellowship with these women where they will pray and encourage these women together. And that was what gave so many people hope in that concentration camp. Corrie always wondered why the officials never stopped them in the prison. But she later got to find out that the only reason why the officials stayed away from the camp at night was because of the fleas. So the fleas will make them stay as much away from the camp those evening times, and that's why their prayers were never disturbed during the evening times. A time came when Betsy prayed that the love of God would shine forth in this dark place. It was indeed a dark place, and their times of prayers and fellowship was actually what gave many people hope in that concentration camp. Betsy fell very sick during the period in the camp, and eventually that sickness was fatal. But at some point, she and Corrie were separated. Her situation kept deteriorating, but her faith did not wane. There was a time Corrie had to express how amazed she was at her sister's love. How could she demonstrate love for these people who were torturing them, who were making others suffer, who were treating them so badly? Corrie couldn't understand it. Even in her death, Betsy will encourage Corrie and say she was seeing a future when the war will be over and they will build a home or even several homes that will cater for those who have been displaced by the war, who had suffered the effects of the war. And those refugees of war, even the wounded from the war, will be needing healing. And that home, Betsy envisaged it all, that it would be something that would provide hope and healing for people. And she kept sharing it to Corrie over and over again. Even in her death, she would say, they need to hear Corrie. We must tell them. We must tell them about Jesus. And she said it over and over again. It stuck with Corrie. Corrie never forgot those words of Betsy. And after Betsy died, Corrie was released, but it was a clerical error that led to Corrie's release. She didn't realize it at the time, but she later realized that it was a mistake that made her get that release. And just a week or a few days after her release, all the women in the camp that were 50 years and older were killed. So Corrie would have been killed. Corrie would have been executed with them, but God divinely and miraculously saved her. After the war, Corrie continued her work. She became a missionary, sharing the love of God all over the world. She visited over 60 countries, preaching about the love of God, the power of love and forgiveness and healing. Even the Beji, their own home, it was created just the way Betsy had envisaged it, and it housed the mentally disabled that were locked away during the war. At one time, when she visited Germany, God led her to have an opportunity of meeting two of the officials that were very mean to her and Betsy during the time in the concentration camp. And one of those lieutenants that was, in fact, one of the ones that supervised as Betsy was being stripped naked, he stretched out his hand to shake Corrie, and she could feel the pain and the anger welling up inside. She tried to smile, but it didn't get to her heart. But she wondered, how could she even forgive this man that had hurt her so much? And from the pain that he had inflicted upon her and the countless others, she said a prayer in her heart. And at that point, God helped her, and she realized just how much that she had been forgiven by God, how much she had been loved. She stretched out her hand to shake this man, and she could feel genuine love pouring forth as she stretched out her hand to shake him, and she released total forgiveness to him from the bottom of her heart. Her life is indeed a demonstration of a biblical woman, a true biblical woman, a woman of forgiveness, a woman who loves, a woman who knows just how much she has been loved by God. And it reminds me of that woman with the alabaster box. She was a sinner, but she lavished her love on the Savior, and pouring the oil at his feet and using her hair to wipe it. She poured out so much love from her heart because she had realized how much she had been forgiven. And that was the same kind of love that Corrie was pouring out in forgiveness to someone who had hurt her, because she realized how much she had been forgiven as well by God. The story of Corrie teaches us so much about the miraculous providence of God. It teaches us how, through many instances that she experienced, how they escaped so many times, how God provided for them throughout the period, how they stretched themselves to cater for the needs of others, how they reached their wits' end, and yet they were able to overcome all the odds because of their faith in Jesus Christ. The story of Corrie ten Boom is one of love, of dependence on God, of a love and sacrificial love for others, and the miraculous works of God. Corrie died in California in 1983 at the age of 91. She had lived a good life. She had impacted people, and she never forgot the words of her sister Betsy. We must tell people, Corrie. We must tell them. And that's my word for you today. We must tell people about the love of Jesus and how much he has done for us. Thank you.